Hey everybody, my name is Tracy Lownsberry. Thanks for watching this video. Hey, if you don't know anything about me, let me just introduce myself a little bit. So I am an annuity focused advisor. I help consumers and clients learn more about annuities and implement them into their portfolios. But I also help and train advisors and agents on another side of my business, which is a training academy, and just really it's a very educational approach. I love learning more about annuities and then teaching what I've learned. And so even on either sides of what I do, whether it's consumer or advisor focusing, it's really education. It's let's dive into these things and figure out what's the good, what's the bad, what are they designed to do and what are they not designed to do. And I thought it'd be a really good idea to dive into an illustration. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a good illustration with a good product, in my opinion, and a bad illustration with a bad product, in my opinion, and really look at the difference between the two. And from an advisor standpoint, what you should watch out for, and from a consumer standpoint, make sure you're not getting sold on what's not a guarantee to you. Okay, there are some hypotheticals with annuities and performance based things, and it's something that a lot of advisors sell on. And what I'm trying to do is change that in the industry, and let's use these things for the guarantees that they offer. So, with that being said, we're going to hop first and foremost into a good, in my opinion, a good annuity. Now, I'm using two separate carriers, two separate products here, some similarities between the two. And I obviously, we're not going to talk about the carriers and the products themselves. I have removed all of that information, but we're going to go through this. And I did have to take out some pages here, but we're going to go through this and we're going to talk about definitions. We're going to talk about rates. We're going to talk about guarantees and all that. So I'm going to go through this line by line with you guys, but I don't want to make this video an hour long. So we're going to speed past some of this. So this is the very first page in this illustration. And what we're reviewing right now is we're reviewing the good one, in my opinion. Okay. So they have this kind of notice here. Please read. Talks about the non guarantees and the guaranteed elements. Obviously, that's really important to understand. And then we're going to go into, my illustration and what I've done here. So obviously we're looking at both of these annuities are fixed index annuities with guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefits. Both have performance elements and both have guaranteed elements. So if you're not familiar with a fixed indexed annuity, essentially it is an annuity that is designed to give you some type of guarantee in the form of a fixed rate of return, but also a guarantee if it has an income rider in the form of income for life. Okay. So that's really what we're gauging here is the income side of them, as well as how the performance affects that income. All right. So in this specific annuity, they have a lot of different indexes you can use. Okay. So I know some of this is a little bit small, but they have a fixed interest option, which every annuity offers. And then they have these very different S&P strategies, Barclays, volatility controlled indexes. So for this illustration, I used S&P 500. I used 50% of their money in an S&P 500 cap and 50% into an S&P 500 participation rate. Essentially what that means is that inside of this annuity, if the S&P 500 goes up, you will get up to that cap minus dividends of the S&P, because that's not how indexes are calculated. And then if it goes up, you will get up to a participation rate of the S&P. So that in this case, the S&P cap is 9% and the participation rate is 50%, separating those two. Okay, so half your money is going to make 50% of the S&P minus dividends. Half will go up to 9% of whatever the S&P makes. Neither of them have any type of losses. If the S&P goes down, you won't make anything. So what this sheet essentially says is it shows you what all the definitions are behind all these different crediting strategies, point to point with cap, point to point with participation rate, trigger indexes, yada yada. But something that people forget is that these illustrations are showing the rates offered day one, and that rate is not guaranteed for the life of the contract unless it's a locked rate for the life of that contract, which doesn't exist in an income product or a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal product. So if you look here in the fine print, it'd be easy to miss this, but I'm using this 1 year point to point cap. And what you guys are going to see is later, it's going to show an illustration based on that cap for 30 years. Well, this cap is only guaranteed at the 9% for 1 year. And it says right here, the cap may change each year subject to a 1% minimum. Now, are there products that do that, go down to 1% after 1 year from 9? I haven't seen one, but over time, can they go down to 1%? Absolutely. Okay. So to say, yes, you're performing at a 9% cap, but it could go down to a 1%. Well, if that happens, what would happen to my contract, right? What would happen to my future value? What would happen to my future performance? This is why it's really important to understand how an annuity calculates income, guarantees, and hypotheticals. And if you look here, just really take a look at this participation rate, minimum of 10%, right? So minimums, right, doesn't mean they're going to go right to that, but in a lot of contracts they could. And there's nothing to say that they can't, right? So let's just take a look at how that's going to affect the contract. We're going to keep scrolling through here. So we have some definitions here. So let's talk about account accumulation value. Very simple, equal to the premium allocated to the account plus interest credited. Obviously, less any partial withdrawal. So something about these definitions that it's fairly easy to understand. But one here is this minimum guaranteed contract value. What we like to explain to people, and this is on illustrations as well, is what the heck is this? So this is regulated, and it essentially says that the minimum guaranteed that has to be credited to your account over time during the surrender value period is that 87.5% of your contract value has to be paying, in this case, 3% on the contract during the surrender value, meaning that about year 4-ish, maybe year 5, you could be able to take out pretty much all of your money without minus any withdrawals, without having to pay a surrender penalty. Okay, so that's pretty much what that is showing there. That's that minimum guaranteed account value or contract value. Okay, definitions: interest earned, index credits, credited rate. There's a lot of inside of these annuities. There are a lot of different rate definitions, and so it's really important to understand how all of those work. So in a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit, inside of an index product, you can have what's called a roll-up rate or a benefit base. And that is how your income is calculated, but it is not real money. And it should show somewhere on the contract here, which we're going to go through. And then you have how your money grows, which is based on the index credits, the fixed account. And that normally shouldn't affect your income, but in some cases it does. And we're going to talk about that. Okay. And then you have surrender charges. They even show you the surrender schedule here, meaning that, hey, if I took all my money out after year 7, I would be able to get 10% of that for free in this case, and then I'm going to pay a 7% penalty on the remaining balance, plus a market value adjustment, which I believe is coming up here. So it goes through some more definitions here. So partial surrenders, withdrawals, nursing home waivers, terminal illness. That's pretty common in a lot of these contracts. How it's taxed, which is super important to understand. A lot of people think that you can put cash into an annuity, and since it's cash, you can go take out of it like a brokerage account. You're not going to be taxed as in the 10% tax penalty, but that's not the case. This is considered a deferred retirement account. Therefore, even if you fund it with cash, any interest earned under 59.5, as they say here, is taxed. Okay, what I'm going to do. Oh, and this is a good one here. So this is talking about the income rider, right? So what is the income rider? What's the withdrawal on it? What are these enhanced income withdrawals, which is really for in this case, increase for up to 5 years in the event of a chronic illness. So they call these long-term care riders. It talks about this income benefit charge. They're charging you 1.25%. It talks about what's called the roll-up rate, meaning no matter the account performance, how much is that income value going to roll up as you defer it? In this case, it's 7%. And it has a benefit base, which has a bonus, which is 25% in its first year. So you can kind of start to figure out how they're calculating your income. So if I have $1 million, they're going to give me 25%, but it's not real money. It's just for my income value. Then they're going to give me 7% every single year I defer it. And then at the time I start withdrawal, they're going to give me a percentage based on my age of that value. Okay. Now, when you start taking income, does it come out of that number? The answer is no. It comes out of your account value, which is super important to understand. So let's hop right into the guaranteed basis of this contract. So this is assuming a 0% income. So in this case, what we used John Doe, 60 years old, deferring 5 years starting on year 6. What is he guaranteed on year 6 with $1 million? Okay. The guaranteed basis of his contract. How much is he getting in income? In this case, income for life. So in this contract, it's assuming a 0% rate of return, minus obviously you have a fee coming out of this account, 1.25. So if you look, his account value is actually going down over time because the fee's coming out, right? And then once year 6 hits in this contract, he's getting a guaranteed payment of $122,723. So I don't necessarily care how they got to that number. All I care is that it's guaranteed. I don't care what their roll-up rate was. I don't care what their benefit-based bonus was. I don't care what their payout percentage was. I care if I put $1 million in, what percentage of that million is going to be coming back to me as a client within what time frame and for how long. So in this case, we could do some pretty simple math. So $1 million at year 6, well, that's 12.2723%. So I'm getting a 12.27% payout rate, not accumulation rate, on my money. That means that, within 7-8 years after that, I've pretty much got my $1 million back. Everything after that is interest, and it's calculated as an internal rate of return. If you live long enough, the internal rate of return will be better than what you'll see in most things. And it's on a guaranteed basis, so no performance. This is what we like to see. This is exactly how a good contract is designed, right? And then we're going to go into this projected value, which is a nice graph that they make. Essentially, it's pretty easy to understand. So you have your benefit base, which is a phony number. Okay. It's just how they're calculating income. Not a big deal. I don't really care about that one, but it shows your accumulated value. So see that orange line, accumulated value is going down because the fee's coming out, then you're starting income, and then it's plummeting into the ground, right? Which makes sense because that's what's going to happen when you start taking 12% out of any account that's not making any money, right? And having a 1.25% fee. But then it's showing this really awesome value here in this bar graph, which is your cumulative income withdrawals. So I know that when this cumulative income withdrawal hits right here, hits on this blue, equals the blue line. So the green bar equals the blue line. I got my money back, right? And then every year after that is essentially interest to me, right? So over this case, over 100 years, if you look on the top right, you see that your cumulative interest, your cumulative withdrawal would have 4.3x your money over 100, up until age 100. And this continues after that as well, right? If you only live to be in your late 80s, it's about a 3x, right? So this is powerful because it's a very high withdrawal percentage and allows you to leverage other assets like risk. And this is why we like it. So now let's talk about the non-guarantees. So this is the non-guaranteed illustration, right? So what is a non-guaranteed illustration? So now what they're doing is they're taking performance into consideration. So again, I have my $1 million, okay? This is how much it's charging me for my income rider right here. And then it's showing me interest earned. This is all hypothetical. This is showing a 30, 40-year period based on these S&P 500 cap rates and participation rates at a back-tested analysis, holding my current rate of 9% on a cap and 50% on a par rate. What could it do? Well, here you go. Right, that $1 million could turn into 1.1, 1.2, whatever it is, right? Here's your interest credited. And then obviously over time, it is actually showing that once you start that income, the interest is just not keeping up with it, right? So if you look through here, it's showing first year you made 73 grand. Next year you made a zero. Why? That means they're simulating the S&P was down. Third year you made 72, 103, and then again, another simulation. So over this 10-year period, it's simulating 3 years the S&P is down, but it's also simulating that the interest earned is based on the rate you purchased it at, which is not guaranteed. And by the way, never happens, ever. The rates always go down and they never go up. Okay. So what you want to make sure is that you're not selling based on anything hypothetical because you just don't know. And when we're talking annuities, we're talking guaranteed income. We're talking like, we're not messing around. We're trying to solve an income need. I cannot rely on performance to do its job when the variables are against me. That's why in this case, if you look, this account still goes to zero. Right? Just like in the guaranteed side, it still goes to zero. Why? Because there is no amount of interest you're ever going to make in an account without getting extremely lucky outside of an annuity that's ever going to keep up with a $122,000 withdrawal on $1 million benefit. It's just not going to happen, right? That's 12%. 12%. Granted, yeah, you deferred it 5 years, but it just doesn't happen, right? So we're not looking at this for a death benefit. Yes, if you die in these, first 10 years, 15 years, it'll be there. We're not looking at it for that though. Okay, we're looking at it for an income solve. Okay. All right, and again, great graph showing that. As you can see here, this graph is not much different from the guaranteed one, right? It just shows that that orange line stretches a little further because there was some performance there. That's it. So these guys break down the interest that is credited, because remember, I have half of the allocation inside of a cap rate. So it's showing me, hey, 500,000 in this cap rate. Okay. Here's the index change itself that they're tracking. So this would be the S&P 500 index they're tracking. And then on the far right here, you look at index credits. Okay. And then here's what it's showing as a credit. It's showing that, the index was up 11.39%. So we hit our cap rate. So we're going to credit you 9%. And then the index was down, you hit a 0. Index was up 9.54, you hit your cap rate. Index was up 19.42, you hit your cap rate. Index was down, you got a 0. And it's showing you simulating that cap rate over time, which, by the way, I've said this a couple times. Could it hold the cap rate within the contract year? This is a 7-year surrender period, meaning after 7 years, you can get out of it, no penalty. Could it hold it within the 7 years? It could. If they budgeted appropriately, options costs inside of these indexes didn't skyrocket over time, it could. But after the surrender period is up, okay, the way that these companies budget for these rates are based on a long-term yield to maturity bond ladder, okay? And they're not going to buy in 10-year bonds once your contract comes up and you could get out at any time, because they're going to eat some pretty nasty surrender if they have to call it early, penalties or just lose a lot of money on it, depending on what interest rates do. So they're not using long-term strategies anymore. They're using short-term. Therefore, they can't afford the budget to buy a 9% option. Okay, so that's something to understand here. So then we go to the participation rate. If you look on the participation rate, 50% of the S&P, it's the same exact thing, only now the interest credit looks a little different because it's 50% of whatever it's making. So yeah, it can make more than 9%, but we found that participation rates are not as consistent. Cap rates normally are a little bit more consistent. Okay. So again, yes, this is performance element, but remember, none of this matters inside of this contract. It's more just gravy. It's more just like, okay, cool. It performed a little bit. Therefore, it kept your death benefit healthier for longer. Okay. In a lot of illustrations, you're going to see this historical period. And this would be true if this annuity was around between, this worst 10-year period, 07 to 2016. If it was around them, sure. But it wasn't. And if a 9% cap rate was around then inside of products like this, which they weren't. So it's not really historical. It's just saying that if you were in an index at a 9% cap rate during the worst 10-year period, okay, you would have made 5.67%. During the most recent, you would have made 6.22, which they're taking 2014 to 2023. And in the best 10-year period, 2012 to 2021, you would have made 7.14%. All it is just how many times the cap rate hit. That's it. That's the only difference. Okay. And then the next one here is showing the participation rate. So worst period, 5.08% return, and then most recent 6.7, and best 7.65. Again, that's based on assuming you're holding the rate during at least a 10-year period, which majority of the time is not going to happen unless maybe you're in a locked cap, which doesn't exist inside of an income annuity. When I say income annuity, I mean a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit. Okay. Okay. So this is a cool graph. Essentially what they've done here is they said, listen, your income that we're giving you, you don't actually have to take it at that time. A lot of these income withdrawal riders are actually based on the deferral period and when you take it. So although down here in the fine print, it said the values shown above are not guaranteed, they actually are, but the reason why they're saying they're not guaranteed is because of this. So they're not guaranteed based on the fact that you could take money out earlier. So the only way that this income is guaranteed for life is if you didn't touch it from the day you purchase the contract to this deferral period, right? In this case, okay, in your first year or after 1 year, in year 2, we're going to give you 88,000. So it's an 8.8% payout. Year 3, we're going to give you 95,000, 104, 113, 122. But if you decided at your age 65 on year 6, man, I really don't need that right now, you could defer it another year and you'd get a guarantee of 133. These are called guaranteed step-ups on your income, and they're based on each contract. Okay, not all of them are like this. This is a good product. We like it for that. So obviously, you can start to do the math, look at internal rates of return, look at longevity risk, mortality credits, how long you're going to live. Obviously, you deferred it. Yeah, I mean, you're going to get a nice chunk in an income bump, but also you're closer to essentially death, right? So with that being said, you have to kind of figure out, where are you going to take money from during this deferral period? If you're taking out of other assets, it might be a good idea to not defer it, right? Just depending on how those other assets are doing. And this is an annuitization report, which I think is interesting. There is a very big difference between annuitizing and in a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit. So annuitizing is essentially you're giving up the annuity altogether, and then you're going to go and get a payment, right? Just like a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit, but annuitizing, you're no death benefit really a lot of the time, no control to get out of it at that time. And every annuity comes with annuitization. Okay. So let's move over to one that I'm not a big fan of. Okay. And there's a reason for it, and you're going to see this. So again, this is a single premium fixed index deferred annuity. Okay. They have a bunch of definitions here on growth potential and protection. This is really just more of marketing piece. Okay. Leaving a legacy, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So again, we're looking at the same thing here. Okay. So a male, John Doe, 60, non-qualified, $1 million, deferring. Okay. Only we're throwing this in an S&P rate, and I'm going to show you a couple illustrations here. So in this case, this one comes with a 6% cap. Okay. So a little bit less of a cap. That's just the rates that they offer. So this is a sheet showing the different indexes available and the hypothetical performance regarding those indexes. So it's showing this average annual return based on live historical return on the index itself. Shows you the rates, 100% participation, 115%, 140, 82, 63. Well, Tracy, why'd you pick the one with the cap? We're going to go through that. So I use S&P 500 because it's got history. We know what it is. We know what it consists of. All of these other indexes you see on here are what we would call hypothetical volatility controlled indexes. Normally they haven't been around very long. They are engineered for the annuity. And a lot of the way that they are created to make the annuity look a lot better than it is. And we're going to show you. So illustration number 1. This is assuming a 0% rate of return. It's a guaranteed illustration. Okay. Only this product doesn't allow you to take it until the 7 years is up. Same thing, 7-year surrender period. This one you have to defer it one more year. So actually, if you really want to compare, if you deferred the previous annuity one more year, you'd have 133,000. In this case, this one does not allow you to take the income at any time you choose. You have to defer it 7 years. And they have a 10-year version as well. I don't like that. It's giving up control. It's leaving people down a path of, not being happy with the performance, wanting to take income earlier, not remembering that there's this guaranteed income payout soon, right? It's just the control is now gone. So here's the guarantees. Okay, this one doesn't come with a fee, so your cumulative value stays the exact same over time. And then once 7 years hits, here's the income they're going to give you guaranteed. It's this lifetime withdrawal column here, $58,125. That's a significant difference between a guarantee of $133,190 on the 7-year deferral here. Or actually, that's 6-year deferral on year 7. Okay? So What's really important, I guess this is actually 67. So it'd actually be one more year, 144,000. So again, even more. So why is it so different? This is a performance-based one, meaning that they're going to give you a low guarantee, but it's designed to give you performance, and the performance helps elevate your income or increase income over time. Okay. So if you look at the cumulative withdrawals here, by 2051, by the age 86, you would have drawn 1.16. But really, from a guaranteed perspective, by the time you're 85, you got your money back. From a guaranteed perspective. Not a fan of that. You buy annuities for what? Guarantees, right? Well, why don't we take a peek at, and this is a little disclosure, past performance is not indicative of future results, yada, yada, yada. And then we're going to get into this illustration here. So this is assuming that 6% cap held and hits roughly 5 out of the 7 years. Okay. So if that was the case, then your guaranteed income at the time you would start it at 2032 here would be 89,580. But the numbers after this are not guaranteed. This is all based on performance. This is all based on this percentage that they're showing you on the left. But if all of these were 0 or less, it wouldn't be doing this. Because as you can see, as it had a 0% interest credit from this year to this year, increase in income did not happen. The way this product is designed is that if it has interest credits, whether you have money in there or not, it'll grow your income. Well, that's great if it holds that cap rate and does well. But if you look at this, by the time, let me go back here. So remember, we're not starting until beginning year 67, end year 68. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year deferral. Okay. So that would be the same as this one right here, 144. So in this case, it's not getting to the 144 until you're 80 years old. Well, it just got its butt absolutely handed to it by the other product. And that's if it assumes that it's holding this 6% cap and it's hitting the cap at the time it is. So the difference here is, so will this one hold its cap? And the answer is we have no idea, because this company doesn't publish their rates. They won't tell us if the cap rates have held in their products over time. They won't tell you. That's called being open and honest about your rates. So obviously, if we look here, okay, over time, income increases look really good. By the time you're 95, you have 271,000 guaranteed income. If you look at cumulative withdrawals, it actually over time beats the other one, right? It starts to beat it if you live to be 95. Now, there's a lot of assumptions here, right? If you live that old, now remember, are you going to be spending more later or spending more earlier? Think about with spending habits of somebody who is, retired. They spend a lot more up front and they spend less later, but then inflation rears its ugly face. So again, showing you that hypotheticals are not how we drive income inside of a portfolio. But now what I want to show you is what you could show somebody. This one ticks me off, if I'm being honest. So I didn't use the 6% cap. I used one of those hypothetical volatility controlled strategies that you saw on, let me go back up here, on this page right here. I'm using this one right here. This UBSIBAL, feel free to look it up. It's got a 100% participation rate. Okay. Best performance in 1 year says it's made 24.54%, but its average return based on life history was only 3.06%. So how in the heck can it show this? Earning 13, 11, 14, 23. Yeah, if it did that, it'd be kicking the other annuities' butt. And over time, from a cumulative withdrawal standpoint, by age 95, you would have 15x'd your money. Does anybody think that that's realistic? If you think that an insurance company can sustain that type of a withdrawal, they'd go broke. This is not possible, right? Because everything's regulated as to how these insurance companies can make money, right? And that money is coming from somewhere. And I promise you that performance, it's not coming out of that. So where's the money coming from? Well, it would be coming from nowhere, because it wouldn't be there. It'd be impossible. There's no way that you can guarantee that type of income to somebody, which they're not, right? That's the point here. So what I did is there's a lot of people that are going to argue, well, Tracy, it's an index that shows history. Well, why don't we just take a look at that? So here's the index. UBS index, Innovative Balance Index. So this index went live in March 2023. So all of these dates on here, all these dates from 2013 to 2024, all these months of performance, think of this as January, February, March, all this, and then at the very end you have your average. All that is back tested. Means absolutely nothing. Okay? But the highlighted here are actual real results. Last year the market was up 27%. This returned 1.83. So you got 100% of 1.83. Got it. This year the market's up 18%. This is only up 3. So how is it that something that's performing terribly compared to an S&P 500 index or the S&P 500 in general can show those types of numbers? And it's because it's been back tested. And they're going to put whatever reason as to why that was back tested and how they think it would have done this. But the problem with these volatility controlled strategies is that even whatever they've back tested on, this is probably made up of some type of equities bond structure. There's a couple things you have to be aware of. One, are there fees? It's not going to show on the annuity, but are there fees in the index? Because that's going to eat up performance. What about, can it switch from being bond heavy to equities heavy? How does that work? It's called rebalancing. And a lot of times these can rebalance and reallocate anytime they want. So back tested might show that it was really equities heavy. Well, obviously, if you were in equities the last 15 years, you would have done great. But what happens if they just decide they want to rebalance into bonds in an environment like today? Well, what you're probably seeing is exactly that, right? And obviously it's going to perform terribly. It's going to perform very similar to a bond or a bond fund in this case. So the cards are a little bit stacked against you. So now we have here this most recent high and low, right? So on a set 6% cap, most recent 4.16%, highest 4.76% return, and then 3.66. And this is assuming obviously it's holding that 6% cap, which it won't after the surrender period is up. Pretty much guaranteed. If that was the case, this company would guarantee it. If that was the case, why don't they just lock the rate in? Why is it subject to go to minimums? You should ask yourself that. So again, the reason why I do what I do is because these types of illustrations, you guys, they're misleading. You have to be very careful. You do not purchase an annuity contract for the hypotheticals. You purchase it for the guarantees. If you're going to use an annuity for any type of hypothetical performance, there's a lot of boxes you have to check. First box is, whatever rate that it's showing you, is it from an index that has history? Okay, that's first thing is very important. It's not that there isn't new and better things that come out, right? But you better understand it, and you better understand what the guarantees inside of it are and how it works and what are the costs. So what's the index? And number two is, does it lock whatever rate it's giving you? If it's a participation rate or a cap rate, or there are some called spread rates, are they locked or are they variable? If they're not locked, stay away from it. Stay away. Okay? Because that insurance company can do whatever they want. They can go from a 200% participation rate to a 30. And now all of a sudden that index is going to do a heck of a lot different than what it's back tested to do, which it already will anyways. So what's the index? Does it have a locked rate? Those very important. So right now you can go pick an S&P 500 at a locked cap rate. You know exactly what it's going to do. S&P goes up, you're going to make up to the cap rate, right? Depending on how it does, minus dividends, okay? Total return versus excess return for the life of the contract. So if the contract is locked at 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, you know what it's going to do. So if you want performance, you can go pick those. They don't come with fees. There's lots of good ones out there. The other side is, if it doesn't come with a locked rate, does that company publish their rates? Hey, if you had this product 10 years ago, this is exactly what the rate renewed at. So there's two things you got to be aware of. Renewal rate and the new product rate. So we're not talking about you purchase a contract and then somebody else purchased that same contract the next year. What was the rate difference? That's not what we're talking about. That is new purchase rate, which can be similar from year to year. We're talking about you purchase a contract, you're in the contract, 1 year's up, it renews. What did your rate go to? That's called renewal rate internally on an existing contract. That's what we care about. Okay. So do they publish those rates? If they do, let's see them. What did they do? What's the standard deviation on that? Right. That's going to give you a good idea as to what to expect inside of that company. And then also within these companies, how do they budget for that rate? So are they open and honest with how they're budgeting for it? Or are they front loading their budget and really can't sustain it on the back end, right? So all things to be taken into consideration when you're choosing an indexed annuity, which is what we're talking about today. There's lots of other types, but these are how these contracts work. These are how these illustrations work. Make sure that if you're an advisor, you're using guarantees. And if you're a consumer, don't get sold on the hypotheticals. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me. You can visit my website. If you're a consumer, Up North Retirement. If you're an agent or advisor, theannuitygiants.com. God bless you guys. Have a great day.